I mean, the entry points, the entry points into radio, I mean, forget even thinking of getting playlisted. There are specialist...
Exactly, there's specialist shows on Radio 1, Again, for those who don't know, the thing about Radio 1 and Radio 2, if you're a singer-songwriter, is they're national and huge. It's BBC. So if you can get on that, and it does happen that you get a DJ, who just totally loves a new act and completely break it on their own, on those two stations. Commercial radio in this country, apart from XFM, is just a total, just boring, just no-go area unless you're a really established act.
Yeah. So you have the regional radio and the national radio. National being right across the country, and then you have the little regional stations, which are very popular. Yeah. But again, they're not going to be so interested. They'll never do anything really unless you're in the UK working. So Bristol isn't going to play your track unless you've got a gig probably that night in Bristol to help promote the gig, and they want to know about a bit of the story behind it. And so apart from that, you are, as Martin said, you're limited really to probably, you've got Six Music, which is that's a really good grassroots, predominantly indie-based radio station. Again, it's BBC. And then the Radio 1 specialist shows. Even to get into the Radio 1 specialist shows, they're often watching what's happening on Six Music to see how well those tracks are, and how the audience responses to that before it goes onto the specialist shows. Before then, they might move it up into maybe even a C listing, and that could be a 6 to 9 month project of several releases before that actually happens to a band.
Just briefly for the guys that don't know, BBC Six Music was a new digital service from the BBC, but in essence, as an ex-double and Triple J announcer, it's possibly the closest to a Triple J that there is in the UK. Radio 1 is not at all like Triple J. It's much more pop and commercially orientated. There are specialist shows within that, but it's not as Triple J as you might think, whereas Six Music is much more, the announcer has a lot more sort of freedom to research and put his own music together, and so therefore Six Music is perhaps a better target for music coming in from Australia than Radio 1 as a generality. Sorry.
That's okay. With regard to digital sales, what would you say are the key platforms? Is it iTunes or?
With regard to digital, with regard to sales in general, it's kind of non-existent
still.
So people go to iTunes to buy music. If you're putting a campaign together based on trying to get into the charts, then you need to make sure you're on iTunes. The other retailers on the digital side of things don't really have any impact on that. iTunes is 80% of the market plus.
But still carry a few around at the gig. Don't forget to carry your CDs to the gig. We did a gig the other, I think, South Bank. Did you come to the South Bank? Yeah, we sold 60 CDs on a Friday afternoon at £10 a pop. Thank you very much. There is still room for the physical side of things, but mainly at the back of the hall.
They keep on announcing, like today's paper's got to think about 7 music. That's to deal with. I've got no idea whether that's going to work or not. And B Sky B, which is Murdoch, they're supposed to be launching something in this autumn. Whether it will work or not, I don't know. Obviously, B Sky B has a huge, marketing clout in this country. So they've, no one knows what the model is in theory. It's going to be something like 15 quid a month to sort of listen to everything, and with a certain amount you can download as part of that.
What about what?
We remain to be convinced.
What about what Nokia are planning to do, where you buy a phone with a set amount?
Again, it's the devil's in the detail. It doesn't convince me. I think personally, the B Sky B one could be interesting simply because of their, they've already got whatever it is, 8 million subscribers in this country, and obviously got the Sun, and they're just their marketing campaign. Is enough to get flat, but we still don't know yet what the exact details are.
Right.
I can see a lot of parents going for it if it's the right packaging. Just simply, they'd rather have their kids downloading legally rather than
illegally.
Right. The reality is, if you're coming from Australia, I would say don't even think about trying to sell product into the UK market. You grab an 18-year-old...
Your holy grail is to be able to tour over here, make money. That's the holy grail.
Exactly. Grab an 18-year-old off the street in London and ask them if they've ever bought music, and they'll laugh at you. So and that, unfortunately, is your consumer. That's who you're trying to engage with. So don't try to sell them stuff, because then they're just going to walk away. Just give them some music. Find out who they are. Don't give it away for free, but at least get some information from them. And they're more than happy to provide data in return for music, and that data is invaluable, as we were talking about earlier. So from a sales point of view, I can't see why you'd want to be doing it unless you've got a record label on board here that have got good market penetration through the standard media channels that are going to actually translate that into unit sales. Otherwise, find out who your fans are.
Right. And what about social media? Is MySpace, still the number one player in this field? Or?
I think I would say yes at the moment, but not for much longer. Right. Personally, somebody gets sent this I hate using it because it's just so sound quality's so bad, it's so clunky, and I don't want all that rubbish about all their friends are. And
YouTube is sort of up there because you can actually see the band working. Yeah. So YouTube is slowly getting into the MySpace for guys like yourself. Yeah. If you have a choice of seeing the band for 30 seconds on YouTube or listening to it on MySpace, you're going to watch it because you want to, you're into the visual side of the music business as well. So,
I'm sure in a year's time it'll be totally uncool for a band to have a thing on MySpace. Because you're not collecting any data from it, and also it's a bit shit.
I mean, things change so quickly, but the reality is, if someone's talking about a band at the moment, today, first thing and you think, oh, that sounds interesting, the first thing that pretty much everyone does is they go to Google. Bang, 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 in goes the band name, and then the very first entry on the response from Google, they click on. So whatever that is at the top there is that's the media channel you need to be on. Right. So you need to do that yourself. Sit in Australia and find out, when you type your band name into Google, what is the number one response from Google, and make sure that you control everything that's presented on that.
And if it's nothing to do with your band, make sure it is.
Yeah.
Make
Change
your
band
marketing. Yeah.
All right. Moving on, how important is it to be part of a scene in the UK?
Everything.
Yeah.
Well, for the bands over here breaking, they are part. Scenes are so critical to all of the big success stories from UK industry, from what I've seen, and it affects everything from fashion to art to so you'll get these little pockets of things happening, and it's almost a reaction to what's happening culturally today. And it could happen in Liverpool, or it could happen in Cardiff, or Manchester, or Sheffield, or Leeds, London from time to time, but it's often quite a bit harder here. And then this thing will crop up, and it'll be a new dance thing, or whatever is happening around it, and the kids go crazy, and out of this pop these bands that seem to be at the centre of it, and everyone wants a piece of that.
And then normally one band emerges.
Yes.
So
you'll get Franz Ferdinand pop out, and then you've got the Cribs pop out, and it's a scene that happens, and it'll be, you can travel from that town to another town, and maybe a half hour to even 1 hour drive away, and the scene will be completely different because they're all supporting a different band and a different football club, and they wear different clothes and they speak with a different accent, and so it's very difficult. If you're coming in from an external market trying to break the UK market, to penetrate an existing scene, because those scenesters aren't really going to be that interested in an Australian band, and that makes it very, very difficult. So you've got to come in almost through a different channel. Right. You are not. It's almost impossible to suddenly become the biggest band in Wakefield, because the Cribs have got that.
Right.
So,
well, how long does it take to break a band in the UK?
Well, it can be incredibly quick.
Yeah,
that's what it's the
Jet. That was that was pretty quick.
Right.
But Jet have never reproduced the success of that first song, though. No. They may still do sort of large concerts, but in actual sort of popularity and stuff, they've never come back to that first record again.
Well, they didn't really build up a core fan base. because they weren't part of a scene.
Yeah, and they never therefore got into the scene by coming over and saying, right, well, we're just going to just keep touring the UK and sort of Northern Europe and put ourselves into the psyche. Like, you know, way back when In Excess did, they just stayed and stayed and stayed until they cracked the market.
Yeah.
You know,
I suppose Australia's never really had that actual scene thing, has it? Because I mean, Vampire Weekend started getting their first press. It was all part of these new bands coming from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
You know, so the first articles appeared in Enemy and things like that about a year ago, and obviously that band's obviously come through and done all the right things touring wise. And obviously there's been a whole bunch of Canadian bands, mainly off the back of Arcade Fire, and that's something that's currently missing from Australia, but you can't sort of invent it. It kind of just needs, you know...
It just sort of happens, you know, it just pops out.
Yeah.
Do you think you need to be successful in Australia before you come to the UK? Because I hear a lot that, I think my music's better for the UK than Australia.
I think reality is, yes. Mm-hmm. For starters, just for money-wise, just your banker gig. But also, it's kind of course, there are examples of bands who mean nothing in their home country, but actually, that's so far and few between. It's like, because if you're any good, you must have to be able to get something. It's like, it's like if you're a Sydney band, if you can't play Perth, why you think you're playing London would be kind of a bit of an obvious question to ask.
Sure. Although you know, we've had a few, like the little guys from Melbourne, Spargo, who came and did those lots of 50-day tours. Sure. They don't go away making a lot of money, but they did make a lot of English fans, you know. And then, unfortunately, they've let that drop and sort of change the direction. But they were originally planning to come and keep coming, but by virtue of circumstance, they had to sort of pull out of that. But they were basically becoming a British band before they were a major success in Australia, because they were going to spend 9 months of the year here because they could, visa-wise as well. That's the other important thing, that, you know, which we haven't even dealt with, is the prospect of not only coming here, but of coming here with the right visas, and I mean, that's all going up the wall, I believe. We've got a newspaper article here about the new sort of work permits that are going to have to be put out. I mean, it's all a nightmare. It's not easy. But there is opportunity, and you know.
I think the other band who were number one last week was Kings of Leon, American band, way bigger in the UK than in America. I mean, they're now, you know, they're an arena act now in the UK. So
did they come here because they thought their music?
Because the initial buzz was again that thing. This is a cool band. I think Oasis, picked up one early and name checked at that time when it was cool to have the Gallagher brothers like you.
Killers were taken to South by Southwest the first time as a British band, and they're from Las Vegas. Because no one in America cared.
And they've done their work, and they understand. You know, the people around them understand the market, and they're towards the UK pretty much relentlessly. I mean, they treat UK as their priority market. And now it's starting to work in the States. You know?
CSS were not that big in Brazil.
So. You know, it's feasible, but you know, obviously both the Killers and even though there weren't names in the state, they were still touring bands. You know, they were still playing to 500 people a night, and they were good live bands. But the beauty of the UK is when you do get that hitness scenes thing, it happens quickly and it happens nationally,
isn't it?
Which you can't get in America. I mean, unless you're really. I mean, it doesn't happen in America because it's just such a major place. And in fact, you used to get American record labels. In the days when they had money, would actually pay for their bands like they could to actually come and live in London for 6 months, because it was way cheaper to break the UK than it was to break the States.
Isn't it almost that if someone that is of influence sees a band in Australia or one of these countries and goes, look, I can actually make this happen for you, then it tends to kick off like a really good booking agent, which will go, you know, so it's one of those tricky things, is that I think the success stories that we can list is because somebody of good influence has gone, oh, that's great, come with me and we'll go on a journey. And if you don't have that, it's pretty tough. And so the question is, how do you find that person of influence?
Well, in not a major way, but in sort of like that mid-range way of not being successful in Australia, was when you went down and saw City Riots at Fused, you said come over to do the Great Escape, and they then planned, as you said, having that date in, they could then plan their time around that and the other thing is, spend your time in your research and get your tour together. Don't just ring up